place you do not know. Lechi lach, on your journey I will bless you, and you shall be a blessing. You shall be a blessing. You shall be a blessing.
Ladies and gentlemen, wherever you are welcome to join us on our tour of the neighborhood, two neighborhoods, Mishkenot Shaananim and Yemin, Moshe. I will be translating the names. I will be telling you stories about these neighborhoods. But before we do that, I would like you to look at the beautiful view, which is right behind me. So this is Noam, and he will start doing his main job as a photographer, and hopefully you can see the landscape behind me. And again, you're welcome to ask questions. Unmute yourself if you need to write on chat, and Noah will see your questions, and then we will be able to answer it in the end as well. And donations are appreciated as usual. So here we start. This beautiful view behind me, you are looking east. Now I'm facing you, so you are west from me. This direction is the Mediterranean Sea, about 60 kilometers from the Mediterranean Sea, about 43 miles maybe, right here in the very center, in the very heart of Jerusalem. And you are facing the east, which you can see right behind me is a church. Okay, this one with the big gray kitchen. It has a bell tower, two different structures, one massive church of their mission. I can tell you so much about this church, but this is not the reason for us to be here, so forget it. But this is the church of their mission, and it is located on Mount Zion. And this is something very important for us because, well, Zion is the source of the word Zionism, and that's why we all participate in this tours, I guess. So this is Mount Zion, and right next to the church, right behind, on the other side of the church, this is the traditional location of the tomb of King David, the one who conquered the citadel of Zion and the one who established Jerusalem as the capital of the Jewish kingdom, which happened about 3,000 years ago, biblical times. So that's right behind me. And as you can see, between me and Mount Zion, between me and the church, there is a gap. I hope you can see it. There is a gap, which is actually a long, narrow valley.
Hugo?
We need to mute somebody. Ilana, could you please? Okay, no, I will do that. Okay, well, I assume it's okay now.
Right.
So this long and narrow valley, which separates me from Mount Zion, is known as the Pool of the Sultan. This way, the northern part of the valley is the Teddy Park towards Jaffa Gate. And actually, this little valley is connected to this southern part of the valley, which is known as the Valley of Hinom. So we have the Valley of Hinom, another biblical name, between me here, between us here and the old city. And that Valley of Hinom further east joins forces with the Kidron Valley and goes all the way into the Dead Sea. The significance of this valley in the modern times is that this valley was the border between Israel here and the Hashemite kingdom of Jordan over there. Because, as you might know, the old city, the entire old city, belongs to the Hashemite kingdom of Jordan between 1948 and 1967, the 6 Days War. And the border was right here in between, and climbed up to Mount Zion towards the church, because the surroundings of the church were Israeli. And that actually has to do with the destiny of the neighborhoods we are going to walk soon. So taking a left a bit north from Mount Zion, you can see the beautifully lit walls. This is the western wall of the old city, okay? Not the western wall of the Temple Mount, not the Kotel, but this is the western wall of the old city. And right behind the wall, this is where the Armenian quarter of the old city is located. And if you take a look to the left, and I hope you can see it, okay, that's after the zoom, but over there, towards the end, towards the end of the wall, you might be able to see a narrow tower. This is the minaret, a minaret meaning a tower which belongs to a mosque. And this is right next to the Jaffa Gate. And this minaret is actually known as the Tower of David. So, well, I hope you can see it. Otherwise, if you've been to Old City, if you've been to Jaffa Gate, so I'm sure you remember the Tower of David, the museum, and the show. And then further over there, further to the north, I hope you can see a beautiful narrow tower with white light to it. Yeah, you're supposed to be able to see it. And that's inside a Christian quarter. And these are the strongholds of the Catholic Franciscan order. All right. And on top of that, it's just beautiful. Now, if we move to the other side, okay, we were looking east, northeast, and now we are looking east, southeast, primarily south. I hope you can see a structure behind me, stone-made structure with a little white dome with a flag on top of it. All right, I hope you can see it. This structure is a Scottish church, but again, the significance of it is not the church, but the location. And the location is called the Bible Hill, Givat HaTanach, because right there, right next to the church, a system of ruined burial caves was discovered, tombs from the very end of the first temple period. And inside one of these burial caves, a tiny little metal piece, actually two of those, wrapped tightly, were found. And these are the two pieces with parts of the prayers of the priest, Birkat HaKohanim. And Sharona, when she told you about the alphabet, she was referring to these inscriptions as well. These are probably the prayers, the amulets, which were placed on the living people, maybe on the bodies. And this is the oldest fraction of the biblical text ever found, 6th century BCE. And the rest is just the modern city, and I don't think you can see much more of it. So let's walk towards the landmark I promised you at the very beginning, which was the Montefiore Windmill. And, you know, normally we have these tours and I talk a lot, maybe even too much. This time it is more about seeing, just, you know, more about being here. I wish you could be here with me, but we do our best. So I think this time I will be talking a bit less, and Noah will do most of the work. I mean, he will show you how beautiful these neighborhoods are. And whenever you are in Jerusalem, hopefully B'Shana Ba'an, next year in Jerusalem, so it is highly recommended for you just to come here evening time, no guides, and just walk around. You know, it is beautiful, it is romantic, and I hope you will see for yourself soon. Well, now without getting too close, this is the young couple. not yet married, but about to get married. Her name is Cole, and this is the way he made the proposal. I think he will make a great husband. Mazal tov. Well, obviously, right behind me, this is the windmill. This is the windmill, which is called the Montefiore Windmill or the Jerusalem Windmill. And this is one of these must-see landmarks, which are visible from almost all over the place, especially before Jerusalem. Modern Jerusalem became so big, and now we have some structures which, you know, hide this beautiful windmill. So that windmill was built back in 1857, started operating about a year later. And that's about 2 years before the establishment of this very first ever Jewish neighborhood, which was called Mishkenot Shaananim, which is right next to us. We have to use somebody again.
I did it.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'm sorry, guys. So this windmill was built by a Moshe Montefiori in order to supply the future locals, I mean, those who will move into the neighborhood of Mishkenot Shaananim when it will be built, with occupation, because prior to this windmill, there were only Arab-operated windmills inside the old city. Actually, not windmills, but just mills. And Montefiore wanted the Jews to be able to provide themselves with occupation and bread. So, well, the story goes like that. When it was built, it looked exactly like this. It was operating for about 20 years in a row, but it never worked too well because the wings were too big and heavy, and the wind was never sufficient, and it was too complicated. It was too high tech for its time, and so each time something went wrong, something was broken, nobody could fix it, and the parts were brought from England, which were actually originally manufactured in Netherlands, and things were just complicated for it. And so after about 20 years, the windmill was abandoned and not used ever since. Much later, in 1948, since this place is so up above, so the Haganah, the Jewish forces which fought against the Arabs, the British, before the creation of IDF. So the Haganah forces placed a lookout on top of the windmill in order to be able to, see what is going on in the surrounding Arab neighborhoods and in the old city. And therefore, the British commandment commanded to ruin the lookout on the top. But the British soldier who was sent to blow it, to place the explosive out there, he didn't want to ruin the windmill. He was just, personally attached to it. And so he placed just a tiny little bit of dynamite, so it was damaged but not ruined. And then the next day, another soldier was sent again, and eventually it was ruined. And you will see on a photo in a minute what it looked like. So you're going to see the explosion, which took place during the Independence War in 1948. And the windmill was heavily damaged, and since it was not working anyhow for a long time, so it was not restored until many years later. And then when it was finally restored, it was not restored according to the original way it looked, but if you were here in Jerusalem before 2012, 2012, when it was renovated, so you can remember the windmill looking quite different. It had green wings, much smaller, just looked different. And then about 8 years ago, the municipality of Jerusalem decided to put a lot of money in the full restoration of the windmill, and they found the original drafts of what it looked and how, and they brought the parts from Netherlands, and they brought specialists from Netherlands to build the windmill, and eventually now we have that windmill looking exactly as it looked. And there was even a plan to make a museum inside and even renovate it, working using electricity today. So it was supposed to supply some bread, and but we had a lot of plans, and eventually nothing happened. And so today we just have this beautiful windmill, which supplies beauty to the city, not more than that. So if Moses Montefiore was the one who built the windmill, or better to say, provided the money to build the windmill. So here we have another something which has to do with Moshe Montefiore, and this is his carriage, or better to say, this is the replica, this is the imitation of his carriage, which was used by Moshe Montefiore as he was traveling around the world. Well, maybe not the world, he never made it to the United States as far as I know, but he was traveling over Europe and Russia and Turkey and Israel, well, the land of Israel, using this beautiful carriage. The carriage never made it to Israel, because when Moshe Montefiore was traveling the land of Israel in the second half of the 19th century, we did not have good enough paved roads to be used by this carriage, and so the carriage never made it here. Only after Montefiore's death, the carriage was brought here. It was placed on display, and then in 1986, somebody, we still don't know who that was and why, but somebody just set it on fire. So the original carriage never made it, and only the metal parts survived. And then only years later, the carriage was restored, built anew according to the photos and the paintings of the original one, which we had. And now we have a glass wall, so we can see it, we can admire it, but we cannot touch it, and we cannot set it on fire, which is very important, of course. So Moshe Montefiore had visited the land of Israel 7 times in a row, Moshe himself and his beloved wife, Judith, and he really wanted to do something for the poor Jews of Israel, and mainly for the poor Jews of the Jewish quarter of the old city, because their destiny was a really poor one. It is difficult for us maybe to imagine what can be so bad about living inside the old city, but it was as dense, as dirty, as polluted, as crowded, as miserable as you could imagine. And so what Montefiore wanted to do is to help them. He was a very wealthy man. He was as wealthy as Rothschild, and he was wealthy enough to retire at the age of 40 and do whatever he pleases. And he had no offspring. So what he was trying to do is to help these people. So before we see what he did for them, I would like you to take a look over there. And over there, right in front of you and behind me, you can see a wall. It doesn't maybe look like much, but that wall, yes, I can see that you see it very well. That wall is the back wall of what Moshe Montefiore did for his people, and this is Mishkenot Shaananim. So let's get downstairs. Please be careful. It's a bit slippery because it was raining before, so please watch your steps. I just told Noam that I want him to show you the other side of the same wall. And as you can see, it looks like it resembles a bit the wall of the old city, right? It has the same, like in Hebrew, it's called the shiniyot, like little teeth on top of it. Right. Well, from here you can see it very well, and now we can start understanding what was the idea of Moshe Montefiore. So to begin with, when he was visiting the old city and he saw the suffering, okay, there's no other word for it, the suffering of the Jews in the old city, he wanted to build a hospital. Okay, that's what he thought will be the most important for them. But it took a little while, maybe more than a little. And so by the time he was ready with plans and money and, everything was ready to build a hospital in the old city, there was already a hospital built by Baron Rothschild. So Moshe Montefiore decided that, well, we don't need two hospitals here. One is enough. And therefore, what we actually need here is to improve the housing. We need a better place for Jews to live. And since the old city was so overcrowded and so polluted, Moshe Montefiore wanted to create another place, another housing for them outside of the old city wall. He actually wanted to start it, all over again, to start it anew. Our last tour was in the Vet Tzedek, and then I told you that was the attempt to create something modern, clean, and pretty for the Jews who didn't want to live in Jaffa anymore. So Mishkenot Shaananim, right behind me, that's exactly the same, but for the people of Jerusalem, for the Jews of Jerusalem. So Moshe Montefiore, being a very wealthy man, he joined forces with another Jew, very wealthy man, who actually passed away already, but he left $50,000. It doesn't sound like that much, but back then, we are talking about the mid-19th century, that was like plenty. This gentleman's name, a gentleman from New Orleans, his name was Yehuda Toro. He was a Spanish Jew. So this money, which was left by Yehuda Toro, and the money which belonged to Moshe Montefiore, was used to purchase this plot of land, okay, all around us, and to build this building and another one down there, and to declare it as the first Jewish neighborhood outside of the old city walls, called Mishkenot Shaananim, named after a phrase in the book of Josiah. And Mishkenot Shaananim, well, it means the dwelling of those who are not worried. The idea was that don't you worry, it will be wonderful for you in here. So just before we move forward, I would like you to see what Moshe Montefiore and Yehuda Torah look like. So just a minute, we will find the right photo. Yeah, this is this is Moshe Montefiore. Yes, okay. He was an amazing gentleman. As I told you before, he retired when he was 40 years old. He was a sir. He was he had a noble British title, because he was the one who was responsible for placing lights all over London, not using electricity, using gas, but thanks to him, you could walk down the street in London and be safe. So after he retired, he and his wife Judith, they were traveling all over the Jewish world, supporting the Jewish world and helping them in quite a few occasions of false, what's it called, when they were falsely accused by the non-Jews. For instance, when they were accused in using the blood of Christian babies to make matzos for Passover. You know, one of these well-known horrible events took place in Damascus, and only thanks to Moshe Montefiore, Jews could, you know, be saved and not assassinated by their neighbors. And among other things, Moshe Montefiore built that structure. And Yehuda Turan, yes, you can see him. You can see that he's a definite American gentleman from the 19th century. They were good friends. And so Yehuda Turan left the money and write in his will that his good friend Moshe Montefiore will know what to do with the money. So here it is, the first part of Mishkenot Shaananim. Well, we will be back to the story of Mishkenot Shaananim. Let's just now say that this was the first neighborhood outside of the old city walls. And better to say that was the first neighborhood which became the cornerstone of modern Jerusalem, because this was the first part of modern Jerusalem, the first thing being built outside, which was public, which was not private. I mean, we had a few private houses and private institutions built already outside of the walls, but this is the first neighborhood. And then there was the second one, and then there was the third one, which is a well-known one called Nachalat Shiva. So, okay, and we have some new guests here. I know that it is a bit too dark here, so I'm moving to another location where we will have more light. Well, I hope you can see how beautiful and quiet and romantic this place is. And you can also see how empty it is. I mean, we just saw one family here, but otherwise it just Noah, myself, and you guys. And this is normally the case for this place, because let's leave for a while Mishkenot Shaananim and move forward into this neighborhood and forward in time. This neighborhood here is called Yemin Moshe. Yemin Moshe means the right hand of Moses. Okay, so Yemin Moshe again named after Moshe Montefiori, and is a memory for him, because this neighborhood of Yemin Moshe was established after he passed away as a memory for him. In the very beginning, there was no neighborhood. In the very beginning, there was this tiny little Mishkenot Shaananim, just, let's say, a few meters away. And here, this was a bare land. This was actually a big and empty space, which was inhabited by some poor Jews who escaped from the old city of Jerusalem, but they had no room in Mishkenot Shaananim. So they simply dwelled here in little shacks, in tents, in whatever they could. After Moshe Montefiori passed away, not his descendants, but the people who were in charge of his fortune, he left for other philanthropic actions. They wanted to build a neighborhood here, but they wanted to be those who would decide who will live here and under which conditions. And so they wanted the people who were already here to move away. But obviously the people didn't want to move away, but again, they had no choice. And so finally they were moved away and settled into other neighborhoods, which are now part of Nachlaot. And Nachlaot is a cluster of 32 neighborhoods right next to Machane Yehuda Market. So once again, this place was empty. And then a nice little neighborhood was built around here, surrounded by walls and having a gate. Okay, right now we are facing the original gate of Yemin Moshe. I'm not sure, well, you definitely cannot see the inscription. Yeah, you don't see the inscription up there, but there is an inscription which is dedicated to Moshe Montefiore. And back then there was a nice wall. Now you see that we have windows, so these are apartments, but back then there was a wall which protected the people of Yemin Moshe. So that was a very nice little neighborhood, very close to the old city. And then in 1948, the war began. And as the war began, this little nice place became right on the border. And as it became on the border, people were much less happy about living here. And this place suffered from the attacks of the local Arabs and the Jordanian forces, which were right across the valley on Mount Zion and in the old city. And so now you will see what this beautiful neighborhood you just saw looked like back in 1948 as a result of the war. No. Okay, that's what it looks like. Yeah, just a minute, Norm is working on it. I'm not sure. I'm not sure you would be able to recognize, but that's exactly what it is. Set up, okay. So obviously people didn't feel like living there any longer, and most of them just left to the western, to the modern city, and the neighborhood was almost abandoned. But as you know, after 1948, we had this, first of all, we have the declaration of the independence of Israel, and then we have huge waves of immigration, which needed a place to stay. And so once again, even though Yemin Moshe looked as bad as you just saw, but it was repopulated again, and the Jewish agency supported the immigrants. Quite a few of them were Turkish, by the way, to resettle and fix more or less the houses. And that was it between 1948 till 1967. And then once again, in 1967, there was a war, but this time the borderline all of a sudden moved east, and all of a sudden Yemin Moshe and Mishkenot Shaananim once again were beautiful neighborhoods right next to the old city. And then the municipality of Jerusalem decided, hey, actually, shall we renovate the place and make it much prettier, and then we can sell the houses to wealthy people? And well, Clearly, the residents were not happy about it, and they even applied to the Supreme Court of Justice, but it didn't help. And so the inhabitants of the neighborhood were forced to leave. They were reimbursed. I mean, they got some money for their houses, but not enough. And the houses were fixed and cleaned and resold. And this time they became extremely pricey because of the wonderful location, as you could see. I mean, we have the old city on one side, and we have the King David Hotel on the other side. Nothing can be better than that. And so today, if you are very wealthy, you can afford yourself having a house here. And if you're less wealthy, so probably you will not have a house in here. But if you're wealthy enough to have a house in there, so probably you will not live here. You will live somewhere else. You will live in the States, maybe, or in Canada, or wherever you like. And then that will be sort of a winter home, or better to say, holiday home for you. And then you will be visiting it twice a year, maybe once a year, whatever. And the rest of the time, the house will be locked and empty. And that's why we are more or less alone here, because the other owners of this place, they are somewhere else, and they don't come here probably because of the COVID-19. And even without COVID-19, most of the time, the neighborhood is just empty, and that makes it even better for the romantic couples.
So the property was confiscated by the government.
Right, exactly. So so there was a question. So the property was actually confiscated by the government, and the answer is yes, because it was, at the first place, it was not privately owned. It belonged to the government, and the government let the newcomers, the Olim, to settle in here. And so the moment the government didn't want the Olim to live here, that was it. And that's why the people applied to the Bagat, to the Supreme Court of Justice. But again, it never helped them. I have a friend. He's an amazing photographer, and he's a tour guide. And he was born in this neighborhood, and his family was among these poor families who could not afford living here after 1967, when this place became too good for them. So they left to another neighborhood, but he still lives in Jerusalem, and he's one of the best photographers I ever saw. Yes, there was a question. Yeah, okay. So there is a question about artists. So yeah, to begin with, when this place was renovated and sold to wealthy people, one of the ideas was to make it into an artist colony, something similar to Old Jaffa, maybe something similar to Tzfat. Okay, so that was the idea, yes. And quite a few artists moved into Yemin Moshe. Some of them were wealthy, some of them are less, but then they were funded by the government because of that idea of the artist colony, but it never worked. I mean, I'm not sure whether it's because the artists didn't make enough money to pay the taxes, and they did have to pay something for the houses, or the artist just moved away. I'm not sure, but this idea, that was the idea, but it didn't work. And so today, I would say 90% of the houses, they're owned by wealthy Jews who live abroad. Right, so here we are standing next to the second structure, which seems very similar to that first structure of Mishkenot Shaananim we saw in the beginning. Okay, I hope you can see the similarity, and I hope you can see that on top of the wall there are these. Well, again, I don't know what should they be called in English, but in Hebrew it is shiniyot, the teeth of the wall, which look exactly like the wall of the old city. So right now, I want you to take a look at a picture which shows what the neighborhood of Mishkenot Shaananim looked like when it was built in 1860. Okay, so Noam is working on it. Yes, exactly. This is it. So what you see there is the windmill, of course, and then you can see two structures. One is the long one, which is this one here, and the other one is the small one, which is a bit higher, and the rest is just a green slope because the people who live here were supposed to have some little private gardens and to supply themselves with vegetables. So Moshe Montefiori's idea was very simple. He purchased the land, he built the houses, and these houses were so much better and cleaner and modern and everything so much better compared to the houses of the old city. And he suggested that the Jews from the old city will move into here, and every family will be living here for 3 years in a row. That's it, okay? Because there were only 20 apartments here, so 20 families, and then another 20 families 3 years later, and so on and so forth. We are so close to the old city. I mean, if we start walking, we will make it to the Jewish quarter in about 15 minutes. Mm-hmm. But, well, it is 15 minutes, but it is beyond the walls. And the people who used to live in the old city, they lived there for generations in a row, and they felt protected inside the old city. And so when this beautiful structure was made, nobody wanted to move here. Not even one family. And so after a while, Moshe Montefiore realized that if he wants his project to be a success, he needs to provide the apartments for free forever. And then he had to pay people to live here. Could you imagine that? I mean, but that was it, because otherwise people were too scared. And so people were paid to live in this beautiful apartment, but they were too afraid to actually live there. And so every night they would sneak back into the old city. And that took months in a row before the first brave families decided that, okay, we can stay here. And that's why this building and the other one as well was built to resemble the wall. You know, that sounds funny, but this is true. This is a true story. So today, it is priceless here. But in 1860, nobody dared to move here because you had a valley and you had coyotes and you had foxes, and above all, you had the Arabs around, and they were so scared of the Arab robbers. And even though nobody was actually robbed, but they were scared. So today, Mishkenot Shaananim is used as a forgot the word. It is used as a music center, and we have some concerts, and we have some meetings which take place in there. And when we have artists, well, you know, normally when there are artists coming to Israel, so some of them will be staying in these beautiful apartments of Mishkenot Shaananim, and Yemin Moshe is, well, we already discussed Yemin Moshe. And, well,
pictures of it before the kids are public.
Okay. If you have any questions, so please write it on chat, but please write it for everyone and not private, but it makes it easy to read. So now we just made it back to the same main gate leading into Yemin Moshe. And now we are walking directly north towards the Jaffa Gate. And so on my right-hand side, well, I hope you can see it, that down there on my right-hand side and down below, okay, Noam said yes. This is the pool of the Sultan, Brechat Sultan. Okay, no, you don't see it. Okay, I'm sorry. But yeah, well, Noah said if you see something which looks like a huge, empty, dark pit down there, so this is Brechat Sultan, and this is where the main water reservoir, the main water storage of Jerusalem during the Ottoman period used to be. So since we have no Ottomans and we don't need water storages because we have modern water supply system, so this huge empty pit became an open air concert zal, and maybe some of you even watched concerts in Brechat Sultan. This is the best place for summertime concerts in Jerusalem. So I really hope that, well, this summer is already gone, but I hope that next summer we will have concerts and events, and everything will be back normally. Yeah. So what you see now in front of you, this is more or less the end, the northern end of Yemin Moshe. And now we will make our way just a few more minutes north towards the Jaffa Gate. We are not walking into Jaffa Gate today. We will not be walking into the old city, but I do want you to see Jerusalem by night as much as possible. And also because next week we will be touring the old city, the Jewish quarter of the old city. So there will be an historical connection between the two tours. Oh, now I see a black cat here, and very often tourists ask me about the stray cats in Israel. Why are they so abandoned, and how come, and all that? It is an issue, the stray cats here, and we do have a lot of cats. But now, after visiting Greece, I can tell you that we have less cats comparing to Greece. And in Greece, they have more cats, and they're even more friendly. So each and every cat can be pets, and yeah, so we have similarities to Greece. כן. אתה נורא גורר רגליים, גורי. זה נורא גורר רגליים.
What was the building with the house doorway on the left of the drive?
Well, there was a big, nice building by the driveway. These are private houses. I don't know whom this house belonged to, but this is just a private house as far as I know. So there's not much I can tell you about it. Sorry. Well, we left Yemin, Moshe, Mishkenot Shaananim behind. And now we are entering a totally different area, which is part of the Valley of Hinom, which is part of the Green Line, this former border. So you have to imagine that here on the right, we have a nice green grass lawn, but this was a mine field before 67, and so right now I'm walking over the no man's land, and the wall over there, the western wall of the old city, it's patrolled by the Jordanian soldiers. And now we made it to a totally different area and a different story. And this is Chutzot HaYotzer. Okay, as you can see, we have this little houses, which are actually little stores. And if there was no COVID virus, so most of them will be open, and we would have different art workshops and little galleries. And every summer we have a festival which takes place around here called Festival Chutzot HaYotzer, and so many Israelis and so many tourists. And right now this is the only gallery, the only art shop we can see open. There is a very nice, very famous, pricey restaurant called Eucalyptus, which is located here. Maybe some of you enjoyed dinner over there. So we are walking in the valley, in the Chutzot HaYotzer, and in another minute maybe, I will make it upstairs. You will follow me, and we will be at the Teddy's Park, at the footsteps of the wall right next to the Jaffa Gate. Okay, so we watched our step walking downstairs. Now we do the same walking upstairs. We are surrounded by rosemary bush. I wish you could smell it with me. It's all over the place. Well, down here in the darkness, there is a fountain which is operating summertime only. And then in the evening, summertime, every half an hour, all of a sudden we have fountains popping from the bottom over there. And then kids play inside, and this is just a wonderful place to be in the evening, summertime Jerusalem. Down there, there is partly restored Arab house, which used to be inhabited before 1948. I don't know if you can see it. And finally, we are walking upstairs for the last time of the tour, right to the wall. Okay, well, all of a sudden it became way too noisy. So just take a look at the Jaffa Gate. I hope you can see the Jaffa Gate right behind me, that gap between the walls. And that's it. We are not going to walk any further. We are not walking into the old city, but here we are. And okay, well, I don't know what's going on, but people are very, very angry about something. So everybody be as loud as you can. All right, they will figure it out. Okay, guys, I'm trying to get to a closer, just a quieter spot. So our tour of breaking out of the wall is over. I want Noam to join me here. Yeah, okay. So we started from a very quiet and romantic area, and we made it all the way to the very noisy main street next to the old city. And thank you for joining us. We shall move a little bit further into a quieter zone, and you're welcome to unmute yourself and talk to us.
Very nice, Julia. I'm amazed that the camera could pick up the quality and the color and the distinction in the darkness. I think we can make night tours now.
Yeah, well, we will be forced to, because it's getting dark, like way too early for us to do anything else. But yeah, I was really worried about this Jerusalem by night tour. So if you think it was worth it, so great, very important information.
Yeah. It worked, and the quality of the sound and the video, considering it's night and you're remote and it's live and all that, fabulous. Thank you very much. It took our minds. It took our minds for a walk and an adventure, and away from watching television and sweating.
Yeah, well, you could not watch television for about 50 minutes. So, okay, I see David said that it's definitely worthwhile. Okay, that's great, because, you know, today we were talking about, me and Noah, we were talking about Hanukkah in the old city of Jerusalem is so beautiful, but we were not sure that it will be possible. So probably it will. Great.
Thank you, Julia.
Yeah.
Thank you, Julia. Marilee from Silver Spring.
Hey, Marilee. I don't see your name for whatever reason. And
Yeah.
It's great that you introduced yourself. Okay, guys, please tell me who you are when you unmute, and please unmute and talk to us.
Yeah. Why don't you talk about next week a bit, Julia?
Okay. All right. So speaking of next week, Tuesday, we have this amazing presentation I'm personally looking forward to by Professor Yossi Leshem about ornithology and migrating birds. And then Thursday, we will have a pilot. Actually, we will be doing something we did not do yet. Let's see how it works. Today, before we started this tour, Noam and myself, we toured the old city, and we made records of the Jewish Quarter tour. So next week, we will make some combination of a pre-recorded tour with a presentation. So let's see how it works, because then we can make it later, like 2 p.m. And then people from West Coast and just people who are, don't wake up that early, they will be able to participate. So next week we have ornithology and the Jewish quarter of the old city, and both will be computer-based, 2 p.m. Eastern time. Okay. Yep. So I really wanted this tour, like this tour of Mishkenot Shaananim, will be connected to the next tour. So we, as you could see, we were physically walking from Mishkenot Shaananim to the Jaffa Gate, and then next tour we will be walking, well, we will not enter through Jaffa Gate, we will be using the Zion Gate, but anyhow, we will enter the old city. So these are the plans for next week, and you're most welcome to join us, all of you, and your friends and relatives and everybody. And Steve, thank you, and Ilana, thank you, and thank you all for coming and joining and sharing and everything.
Great. Well, welcome back to Israel, Julia. And